So Laura, let's start. That's a starting point. You're a real expert in education along with Sam. As an opening gambit, what do you think of what Labour is currently offering on education? What do you think is good, and where do you think the gaps are or the weaknesses?
So I think the 6,500 teachers in the pledge card it's a good pledge in that it's got a number, it sounds pretty big, and it will work on the doorstep. I think if you're in education and you're aware of the fact that there's more than 24,000 schools, it feels a bit like, one limb of a teacher for every school. It's not very much. So I don't think it's winning the education crowd over, but politically I understand why they've gone there. In terms of some other stuff that they're saying, the things that are very popular with teachers is they've talked a lot about mental health. So they've promised things like mental health hubs in every area, more mental health professionals in schools. Now, Sam said earlier, the problem with that is, well, how are you going to do that? It's very easy to say you're going to have more mental health professionals, but it takes a long time to train them, and it's not always something people want to go into. So that one is going to be about the detail. Other things they've talked about, free breakfast clubs. This has been in manifestos for the last 10 years. I think the Conservatives tried it in 2017, famously put aside 7p for each breakfast, and it didn't go down particularly well. But, breakfast is a good idea. And then the controversial one is curriculum review. That's the one that on the ground in schools, I think there is a division over and is a bit of disquiet.
I wanted to ask you about that. They've been pretty vague about what this curriculum review is. I always think there's kind of two types of review. The one where you know what you want to do and you do it quickly, but you get someone respected and well-known to front it up to give you a bit of credibility. And then the one where you don't know what you want to do and you want to long grass it for 2-3 years. This feels a bit more like the latter to me. Do you think that's fair?
Maybe, but I don't think it matters either way for people on the ground. I remember back in 2010, Sam, sitting with you and kind of begging you not to do loads of curriculum change for the same reasons that I think the teachers now won't want a load of curriculum change, and they won't really feel differently about it in 2 or 3 years' time than they do now. It's loads of extra work. When someone comes along and changes the curriculum, it means you have to rewrite every lesson plan, every resource. You have to rethink all of your assessments. It's just hours and hours of work. And for politicians, it doesn't feel expensive because the teachers are already being paid for anyway. So for them, this is exactly, it's practically free. You get to go on telly and talk about exciting things like English and poetry and which part of history is the most important. And everybody loves the phone in and you can get the headlines. Sam's nodding because he did all of this, right? The problem is the people who are on the ground have to spend ages and ages and ages then reworking everything. And you're already busy with everything else, with behaviour, with attendance, with the fact that child poverty has gone up. So they won't want it, not because they necessarily are in love with the curriculum. And there are a whole bunch of teachers who want some changes, for example, less curriculum in less content in science, a little bit of change in the primary curriculum. But what they won't want is wholesale change, which is what unfortunately tends to come about because it's good for the politicians.
And I guess you've got this sort of fear from some parts of the education sector as well that they could introduce quite a lot of muddled thinking into the curriculum. And we look at what's happened in Scotland with the introduction of curriculum for excellence about the same time as we introduced our last curriculum. What's going on in Wales at the moment, where they're doing a big curriculum reform exercise there, is that they're moving in a sort of direction of 21st century skills, if you like, and lots of vague terminology about things that we like kids to be able to do, but moving away from a sort of more traditional structured curriculum. And the evidence, certainly in terms of attainment in Scotland at least, is that has not had a very positive effect. They've gone below England in this big OECD PISA study and so on. Do you think Labour are sort of conscious of those risks? Do you think that there is a danger that we might end up going down the same kind of route that Scotland or Wales? Maybe you don't think it's a danger.
I think Labour are conscious of it because it's the one thing that the Conservatives have got to throw at them at the moment is anything that's not happened particularly well in Wales is being thrown at Labour repeatedly, whether that's transport or health or in this case, education. So they're very aware that those PISA scores do matter and they won't necessarily want to risk them. But as you've just said, there are some other issues that were a bit muddled in the thinking of the last 14 years. For example, by focusing purely on academic learning in a very traditional way, what we've ended up with is a packed, probably overpacked curriculum that can be quite demotivating for those students who fall further behind at certain points. And it's all very well to say, well, you've just got to catch them up and we'll put loads of extra initiatives in. But actually, there isn't a broad range of qualifications available. I think there is a challenge around the primary curriculum. Specifically, primary teachers tell us on Teacher Tapp that focusing on very detailed grammar, I think having to still teach things like Roman numerals, these are not good for the
that
primary
one was
curriculum.
just Nick Gibb. To be clear, the Roman numerals was just Nick Gibb wanting Roman numerals.
Sam. Yeah.
I'm not fussed about Roman numerals.
Listen, if you try to pin the headstone on me, you can own Roman numerals.
Fair enough.